back with the InsurTech Insights Trust Talks podcast, hosted by Clearspeed. I'm your host, Danny Ng-Si-Kwan. In the Trust Talks podcast, we're asking senior insurance leaders for their perspectives on trust in the context of the industry. Why is trust critical on both the consumer side, but also the insurer side? What are the barriers to greater efficiency, profitability, and consumer loyalty? And how does all of that ladder back to building trust? For this episode, I'd like to welcome Bryan Falchuk to the table. Bryan's the author of the Future of Insurance book series and host of his podcast, President and CEO of the PLRB, and is both an advisor to the insurance industry and former C-level P&C insurance and insurtech exec. Bryan, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. And I know you have a lot to say on all of this, so let's get right into it.
Okay.
First question for you. Insurance is a for-profit industry, so where do you see money being left on the table, and what can we do to address this?
Yeah. So I think when people hear a phrase like leaving money on the table, they think about sales or like, could I have upsold or increased the coverage or sold another policy or whatever? And I get that, but that's not really the path to profitability in insurance. So if we think about money on the table from a profit standpoint, it's really about indemnity, how we look at the exposure, how we price it, and then how we respond to it when it plays out, right? And so that to me is, that's the nuts and bolts of insurance. So it's not about marketing to drive more sales. It's about having the right sales in the door and then being a lot more exact, if you will, and caring about the accuracy that we bring to the actual analysis of the risk. And I've seen lots of good moves on that part. And I think we've made a lot of progress in our, I was just in a session talking about like segmenting even deeper and refreshing the segmentation regularly. And so saying like, this is our appetite and just sort of leaving it at that. And that was a question from the audience was actually like, why would you keep resegmenting? And I was like, why would you not?
Why not? Yeah.
Like, the world changes, your product changes, the way claims play out changes. So you need to stay on top of it. But we've also not done well. So I've been in plenty of conversations where, I sat in a pitch from an insurtech who had this great solution that would allow the carrier to have a more accurate predicted loss ratio when they were looking at a risk, 5 points more accurate.
Yeah.
And I watched the chief actuary just sort of look at it and say, oh, that's not that much. And I used to be chief claims officer, and I hate this story, but I love this story because it's I think anyone in the industry can identify with it. Is like, if I get a call from our CEO that was like, hey, can you take 5 points out of our loss ratio, other than not paying valid claims, which is not a viable path, I have no clue how to do that. So when we have something that can get us to not leave money on the table,
yes.
Why would we just sort of write that 5 points to pretty much any carrier is material? Yeah.
Why are we like this?
So there's a whole lot behind it. Ultimately, I think it is kind of psychology and culture. It's we are risk averse people as a whole, and for outsiders, that might seem weird because we go around buying risk. So like, don't we love risk?
Right.
But we really don't. We buy risk and then we box it in and we put conditions and stipulations on it and we put limitations on it and everything. And so we're uncomfortable with the unknown, and doing something new is unknown. When I was running claims, I sat in a panel with, some other chief claims officers, and someone was talking about moving to predictive analytics. This is like earlier days when AI hadn't been talked about yet, right? It was all predictive analytics to try to predict the claim outcome. This is in litigated matters.
Yes.
And this chief claims officer got really uncomfortable, and he's like, well, we don't know if the prediction would be right using this new tool, and our claims take 3 to 5 years to play out. So we could be sleeping on a time bomb, basically. Now, if you looked at their combined ratio, it's over 100. So this is a carrier who is losing money in their current operations, and their head of claims is holding back on trying something different because it might be a bad answer. Now, I get that may not have been the right answer, but what you're doing right now is a bad answer. We already know that, but his attitude was, well, that's comfortable and familiar, and I can get my hands around it and explain it, even though it's losing us money. It sounds absurd, but this is actually really common human behavior across the board. So yeah, we don't like risk. We don't like change naturally as a species, and insurance species even more so.
Yes.
And so it's tough for us.
I remember in our earlier conversation, I was reminded of something that a former CEO used to say: just change is hard, but irrelevance is worse.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think we're hitting this this tipping point where things do have to change. Like there's no choice, in the matter. And maybe we can talk about the consumer trust side again a little bit. It does feel like it's taken a hit.
Yeah.
What can be done to rebuild it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've really done anything to build it in the first place. And that's the reality is we're there for people in tough moments. And by and large, insurers are actually looking for coverage, trying to take care of people despite the public sentiment against us. But we've never really done a good job in genuinely helping the public understand insurance, which is complicated and hard to understand. And so we've fallen into the easy path, which is either fear. So like sell them the fear, which, by the way, if they don't trust you to follow through on making them whole again, you've just sort of set them up to feel even worse. Or the easiest path is save money, right? Like insurance doesn't matter, just pay less for it. That's a really bad way to frame your product. Like, hey, this doesn't matter. The cheaper you can get it, the better. And that's kind of been the winning strategy.
Right.
Unfortunately, if you ask people to quote or to bring up a specific marketing slogan or campaign from an insurer, it's never the fear-based or the like, we're there for you in the tough moments ones. Those feel very generic. It's the catchy ones around how much money you save. Right? That doesn't generate trust. There's a mirror image to that on the carrier side as well. As we bemoan this sort of adversarial nature of the interaction with a claimant or an insured who thinks we're there to screw them over, to put it bluntly, right? Like, and when you're trying to help someone and you're being treated like you're not trying to help them, it's even more offensive. It's one thing to not thank someone when they're standing up for you. It's another to be mad at them in the process. And, I would hear my claims team take these first calls with claimants, with insureds who were so suspicious. It was adversarial. And the person on my team is like, I woke up this morning to help people and I'm being punched in the face for it. That's a terrible, morale, employee retention kind of situation. So that's not good and doesn't lead to good outcomes. But we're also adversarial towards them at times. And fraud's a great example when you talk about trust.
Right.
You look at the historic approach to fraud and it was like, there are people perpetrating fraud. We need to catch them. You need to stay vigilant. We don't catch enough of it, which sure breeds you to be suspicious of what you're looking at.
Yes.
Understandably. However, if you're focused on just catching fraud, the solutions you put in place will probably flag more things than are actually fraud. You're probably still going to miss some stuff. But we focus so much on the false negatives, like, oh no, we missed something, right? Like it said it was clean, but it wasn't. And so we go overboard in trying to watch out for fraud.
Yes.
That's fine, except that there is a cost to thinking something's fraudulent when it isn't. So, I've talked to enough people who think like, oh, it's fine. We figured it out after 30 days. We realized it was clean and we let the claim go along. Okay, but what was the average life cycle of that claim versus one that you didn't have any suspicion of? Like for control for circumstances and whatnot. And what you find is even when you determine relatively quickly that it was clean, it still takes longer.
Yes.
It still does slow things down. You're more careful, you're more cautious, rightly so. However, longer total life cycle of the claim or total handle time, which generally aligns with higher claim costs, higher loss adjusting expense, higher indemnity, more likelihood that an attorney's brought in, a plaintiff's bar has come in, and public adjusters come in.
Yes.
Someone who might agitate and drive the cost up when, if you had rightly identified them as not fraud up front, you would have saved all that. So I'm more interested in the false negatives actually than the false positive. I'm getting confused with the false positives than the false negatives, because it's those good customers in a legitimate bind that we are trying to be helpful to, that at least for a period of time, we've treated the wrong way.
Yes.
Newer solutions are better at getting rid of that. And I, in my book series, I talk about a fraud solution, and I was expecting it to be about, we caught all this extra fraud and it paid for itself. And the person on the carrier side who led the project was like, that's fine, but actually we didn't think we had that much of a fraud problem, and we were pretty good at catching it, and we are still that way. We're a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it's all the stuff that we thought was fraud that isn't, that we were wasting our time with.
Yes, we can settle faster. Customer is, settled more quickly.
Yeah.
Think about what that does for
Yeah.
loyalty.
You're wasting your resources. You're wasting your customer's time. You're wasting customer goodwill. You're wasting the chance that they renew, or if they're not a customer, they could be a business or a personal lines insured of yours as well. You're missing all of that. And so I was really surprised that business case ended up focusing on the upside of the not fraud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just shutting things down before they've even risen to the level of someone looking at them. And it's like, no one talks about this in fraud. And actually having that trust of the insurer, of the claimant, is just as valuable, if not more.
That's the thing. And I think leading with trust, or looking at a trust first lens, does change the equation and the conversation that way. So you're not like trying to find the fraud, but you are clearing the people, who are genuine claimants and getting you through the process faster.
Yeah. But can I just throw in, there's a hold up to this. So I know there would be people listening who say, but these people, but we don't know. We're not talking about just blindly trust everyone and get taken advantage of. We're talking about there are tools now. There are approaches now that can do a dramatically better job. And it's not just because they're flagging twice as many things or 3 times as many things. They're flagging the right things, and they're doing it in a much more directive and specific way. So you can go in and figure out, is it real or not? And you do that before you've paid, it's really hard to claw back fraud once dollars have gone out the door. So it's not about just let everything go. It's about being smarter. Again, to that, the chief actuary who let the 5 points go is we have better answers. We should be using them.
We should be. I wanted to come back to that actually, I remember in our earlier chat too, just the idea of just. Yeah. No, it's just 5 points.
Oh, such a dangerous word.
And the idea that, we talked about how there's that accepted lore, 10% of claims are fraudulent, that's just how we do business, and that's how we operate. But I remember you had said, what if that could be 5?
Yeah, that's great.
So we can say, well, it's just a 5% difference, but how many billions of dollars?
Oh, we've priced it in. It's fine. Okay, well, what if you didn't have to price it in, or you could cut it to 5%? Imagine your price competitiveness then, and no one would be able to catch you. Yes. So we bemoan, the commoditization, and it's about cheap or fear, and then we have things we can do to actually create material advantage. But we get into it's like, oh, but that API costs 5 cents more than what we're paying right now. And okay, but value is not paying 5 cents less. Value is what money on the table. Back to your original question is, what's the net value of it? So I'm as guilty of being cheap as a lot of people are. I had a conversation with my financial planner the other day because I got a big tax bill from, capital gains, which is a good problem to have. My father would rather pay no taxes, meaning he lost money. I'm like, well, I get it. You don't want to lose. But when I raised this to the financial planner, he's like, all right, so we need to reduce your taxes. And I'm like, it's not about just blindly no taxes or all the gain. It's about both sides being informed by each other so that I'm making a total value decision. It might be better off paying some taxes if the net result is better. I just want to make sure the math recognizes there's 2 sides to the equation and not just one. And it's taking a true value-based decision and not looking at a price tag and saying no to it just because there is a price.
Yes. And I think, that reminds me of another point, which not just looking at the price tag and deciding, but also within organizations, if they're making decisions somewhat in a silo, there's that, which cost center does this go into?
Oh, yeah.
And then you just don't do anything.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen that IoT is a great example, in personal lines. In commercial lines, it's easier to find places to stick these sort of risk management or loss prevention activities, like installing IoT, like water leakage sensors, for example.
Yeah.
Because you often will have a risk management budget in a larger, at least commercialized policy, but in homeowners, you don't. So if you're going to give away leak detection sensors and water shutoff devices, who pays for that? If you're not going to charge the customer, someone's got to pay for that. The agent's not going to pay for it. Is it a marketing spend? I see some carriers who think of it that way, but the benefit doesn't fall through to marketing, so why should marketing pay for it? Is it a claim spend? Well, sort of the opposite of a claim. So why should claims spend on it, even though it's fewer claims? Isn't that a benefit to claims? I've seen carriers who have done pilots actually have clear multiple X ROI.
Yes.
You see, but we don't know what cost center to put it in, so we're not going to do it. Or maybe we're not going to do it this year. And it's but you have the money. It's just in the wrong cost center. Can you not?
You see the value.
Yeah.
So what are we?
And this is where I think we get trapped in local optimization quite often because we do things in silos, or it's a specific issue or specific line of business. and we might miss the chance to make a global optimization or reach a global maximum
Yes.
because of that. And that's, I mean, frankly, that's a CEO and CFO and maybe COO's job, is to have that cross-organization purview. We shouldn't be scared to do it when we find those moments, even if it doesn't fit into the nice, tidy budget that we put together. I'm not saying spend irrationally and outside of the dollars that you have, but when you know something is a net positive, why would you let difficult accounting that you could solve for with some more effort, why should that be the reason you don't do?
You've heard what he said, folks. Last question, Ryan, as we wrap up. What's one thing you would share with folks listening today, that you think they should be paying more attention to, they should be doing right now?
So the hashtag answer is AI, but that's not actually the answer. People actually get really annoyed with me for this because I don't say a technology or solution or whatever. I think it's actually much more fundamental than that, and it's around culture. It's just hubris. When your ego and sense of your perfection or having the right answer keeps you from going down the right path. And we've talked about lots of examples of that. They're like, oh, that's not that much. We already do this really well. Oh, we already baked the fraud into our pricing, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
If you think you have all the answers, the end is coming. You like your point on irrelevance, right? I think a very dangerous thing is having a lot of money in the bank, because it tends to breed complacency and a sense that you've got it right. Being rich or having a large surplus or excessive reserves are not signs of success. That might be past success, or maybe market conditions or luck or a number of things. Even if it is that you made all the right decisions and are the perfect manager, does that mean that you're done making perfect decisions forever? Having that openness to being wrong. I said on another podcast, I say a lot of things about where the industry's going. I'm happy for people to disagree with me, and I don't mind being wrong. And the hosts laughed at me, that's not true. Everyone hates being wrong. I said, no, I don't actually care. It's would I like to be right? Sure, unless it's something really scary I'm talking about. Sure. But it's the fact that I would rather say what I think is true and have people disagree with me and engage in it and move the thinking of the industry forward, than for me to be right and people be like, oh yeah, he said it's done. I don't need to win the points of being right. What I need, and the reason why I put this stuff out, is the engagement from the industry. And you don't get that when people just assume that they're perfect to begin with, whether they explicitly say it that way or not.
Excellent. Inertia ends here, folks. You heard it here. Bryan, thank you.
Thank you for having me.